This passage of Scripture, this narrative, shares with us what I call an amazing miracle story recorded by Luke. And I call it amazing because in this story, there was no physical contact made by Jesus in the healing of these 10 lepers who were seeking his aid and seeking his assistance. There are some who may be led to believe that Jesus made no physical contact with these men because of their contagious disease. They were lepers. But this is hardly the case, seeing that there is nothing in this world that could hurt or harm the Son of God. Mary Ann Baker wrote a hymn that was made famous by the late Reverend James Cleveland. It was entitled, "Peace Be Still." And part of that refrain says, whether the wrath of the storm-tossed sea or demons or men or whatever it be, no water can swallow the ship where lies the master of ocean and earth and skies. They all shall sweetly obey thy will. Peace, peace be still. These lyrics, as do the Gospels, listen, testify to the truth that there was not then nor is there currently anything in this world that could harm Jesus. So the decision to not have any physical contact was not one made out of fear or assumed threat of being infected. Rather, that decision, this story, and the miracle it reveals was one about faith. It is a story, a faith story, about the kind of faith that was not passive, but one that was assertive, about a faith that was active, which resulted in bringing about desired results. But there's another truth in the story, and that is that it also serves for us today as a warning against a passive faith or a passive religion that is unfortunately practiced by many professing Christians. It serves as a warning against a stagnant religion and a stagnant kind of faith that finds itself stuck and stalled and stultified, not being active or not being dynamic. It's about the kind of faith that many profess to have. However, that professed faith produces little in experiencing the wonder-working power of God in their lives. For certain, this narrative can be viewed as being illustrative of radical faith, because it often takes radicalism to get what we want. And even in Christianity, it takes it to get what we want from God. We witness a radical faith in the text where we see Jesus on his way to Jerusalem. And he's in Galilee, which is in the north, and he's moving southward on his way to Jerusalem, and he enters a village that bordered Galilee and Samaria. And there, living on the outskirts of this village, were some lepers, 10 in number, who encountered him. As a way of review, we recall that lepers were the outcasts and the ostracized of community. Their disease was communicable. And so according to Mosaic law, they were banned from having contact with any person, whether they are family or friends. family or stranger. They were banned from having any contact. Those infected with this disease, they in turn lived together in an isolated community and was dependent upon solely the benevolence of townspeople to leave provisions for them in order that they could sustain life. If someone approached a leper, being unaware of his disease or her disease, according to the law, they were to shout, "Unclean, unclean," which served as a warning to any passerby of their loathsome condition. And such was the case in the text. These men living in isolation outside of town, they espied Jesus and began to shout out to him, but oddly not with the words "unclean, unclean." On the contrary, they began to call out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." I said to the church this morning, how they possibly knew of Jesus is unknown, seeing the fact that they were lepers, for they would have had no prior contact with him. But apparently they knew enough about him, or had heard enough about him, to call him Master and plead for mercy. Now, this is the interesting part of the narrative, because Jesus, hearing their cry for mercy, he does not touch them. Hearing their plea for mercy, Jesus does not come in close proximity of them, nor does he anoint them to bring to pass their healing. When they yelled out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us," he doesn't touch them, he doesn't come close to them, he yells back. Look at it. You got a Bible. Look at it. He yells back, "Go, show yourselves to the priest." Now, his response to their plea was nothing like what they had expected to hear. Now, I'm certain that they began to ask each other, "What did he say?" And one by one they replied, "He said, 'Go show ourselves to the priest.'" And they're looking at their hands, and looking at the hands and the skin and extremities of one another, and nothing had changed. It all looked just as it had a minute ago. Now, if what they had heard about him was true concerning these other miracles, healings, then for certain he would touch them like he had touched the people who were deaf and dumb and demon possessed. I mean, if what people were saying about his wonder-working power was true, perhaps he would, spit on the ground and make a mud pack like he did in the one that he put on the eyes of the blind man and told him to go wash in the pool. Maybe he would make a mud pack and put it on us, or if not that, maybe he would allow us to touch the hem of his garment like he let the woman touch the hem of his garment who had been afflicted for 12 years with her malady. But to their surprise, he did none of those things. He just yelled back, "Go, show yourselves to the priest." That goes without saying, they were at a crossroads. And they could have given in to their presupposed methods of healing and thus choose to feel that their condition, their lives would never change, since he didn't do it like I expected him to do it. He didn't answer me like I expected. So I'm just going to give in to my condition. It's never going to change, and I'm going to ignore his word. This can be the common response to the answers from God to our pleas when his answers do not align with our preconceived ideas and notions about how we ought to be answered.